a little bit. Okay? Because that black font stuff is just annoying. Eh? That black console is like an ugly console. I hate it. All right, so this is what we're going to look for from now on. So it's 4. Press any key to continue. This is cool. And if I run it again, right? Let's run it again. 2. Press any key to continue. Run it again, right? 4. Press any key to continue. So I've got a random number going on, right? That's going to give me random values every time I run the program. All right. I don't want to do this every time. I think, you know, this press any key to exit kind of thing might be something that I want to put into a little method of its own. But let's just wait for now. What if I wanted to create a way of pressing a specific key? What key could I listen for? Could I put in a specific key in my read key? How do I do that? Anyone know? Huh? If else. Okay. If I read my key and if it's a specific value, right? Does console.read key output anything else? Like if I go console.read key, does it go? Can I assign a variable to that? Okay, let's go. So let's say if I say I'm going to choose, and it's usually a string, right? So we're going to say string console key. We'll call it console key, right? And we'll initialize it with nothing for now, right? Because that's what we're going to do. Console key is going to be equal to, right? Console key is equal to console.read key. Read key. Is that possible? How come I'm getting an error? Right? Didn't we have yesterday how it worked different than this? When I was trying to get a read, I want to read the console. How do I do that? It's read line, right? But if I read line, right? It's not read key. I can do a read. Let's see what it says here, right? For read, it says int console reads the next character from the standard input stream. Only one character, right? Read key, right? It says obtains the next character or function, right? And has one overload, but it does return a key, a Boolean, right? Yes or no? Does it read or not, right? This one, right? The return value is an integer, right? Console, right? Console read. And this one here, this read line, right, is a string. So this is the one I want, right? Because I want to be able to return a string value. I want to be able to absorb a string value into my my thing here. So this is what I'm doing. I'm doing a read line. So console key is equal to console.readline, right? And when I do that, I'm listening for a keyboard entry, right? And if I have a specific key, right? Like let's say, for example, right now it says press any key to exit, right? So maybe what I want is like press the, I'm listening for an enter key or something like that. How do I check for a specific key? Is it key value or can I check strings? Strings, right? In this particular case, right? So if I want to exit, maybe what I want to say is instead of any key, I want to say press Q to exit, right? So if that's true, then I'll say basically if it's a Q, I stop executing the program. If it's not a Q, right? Because it's not going to stop here. Like it'll stop any key right now, it'll still exit because there's no other commands that I'm doing here, right? But if it's not a Q, I want it to I want this to loop over and over again. I want to check my keyboard over and over again, right? In order for me to do this, to check every single time to see if I've exited, I should probably create this or put this inside a method. Now instead of retyping this or moving it around or calling the method, I'm just going to copy my lines like this, highlight my lines, right? And if I'm successful, this will work. Here's I'm copying my lines. I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to refactor, right? And I'm going to go extract method. Okay? So there's two. We did rename last day. Today we're doing extract method. When I do that, it's going to say, hey, what's your method going to be called? And it's looking like it's going to say, it's defaulting to new method. It's asking me to provide a name for my method. So I want to say maybe like check console or check keys. Check key. Right? And this is a preview of what it's going to look like up here. It's going to say private static string, right? That's what it's returning, a string. And it's going to say check key, and it's going to take console key as a variable, right? And then it's going to create my method stub. Let's take a look and see what it does. Bam, here's my method. Now this is a nicer way of writing a method than writing it by hand, because a couple of reasons. Less typing errors. Fingers create errors, right? I might forget something. This way, I've got my private static string. That's my output. That's what it returns, right? So it's returning console.key. It actually creates the return statement for my method as well right away, right? So what it's saying is console key is equal to check key, console key. This is the right methodology, right? Instead of using a reference or an out or something like that for me to get input back from a method. This is the right way to do it, right? Console key is equal to check key, console key. And it's going to take console key and whatever I get from my, my console, it's going to put it inside this variable. And now I can check it, right? If console key is equal to Q, right, as an example, then break. I can stop. Otherwise, I'm going to keep checking my console, right? A nice looping structure, a nice check structure. One of them would be if then, else, if else, if else. And I'm always checking console key, right? But what is there? Is there a better conditional statement to use? Huh? A switch statement is the better way to use it, right? So what I want to put in here is a switch. So I'm going to go switch. And when am I switching? I'm switching console key, right? That's the variable I'm checking. And inside my switch statement, and by the way, I got my code block. This code block is my scope, right? Inside my code block, I want to check console key. And again, I know this is a review for some of you, but hey, it's only day 2. I'm going to say case. That's the next piece I'm going to do. I'm going to check for a case. I'm going to say if the case is a, I'm checking for a Q, right? Then, and then I'm going to do a break, right? Isn't that how it works? So case Q, I'm going to do something. I'm going to stop the program, right? Right? I'm going to exit. Otherwise, if it's not case Q, right? What do I want it to do? I want to continue looping. I want you to continue doing stuff. I want to check. I want to check console key again. I want to check key again, right? I want to keep checking the keys because I want to loop, right? So I can put default, right? My default case, right? What do I want to do? I want to check key again, console key, right? Console key is equal to check key. Like the same, actually I can write this whole thing again, right? Because I want to keep checking the console. Ah, made mistakes. See what happens with typing errors. All right. So either way, and if I don't check for, if I don't get a Q, I'm going to keep going, right? I'm going to keep checking. This switch statement is going to check one time this console key, and if it's not a Q, it's going to get another. It's going to ask the console for another key. It's going to run this code, press Q to exit, right? Again, it's going to keep asking me to press Q to exit, right? The thing is, once it leaves this control statement, it goes here and it stops anyway, right? So what do I need to do in order for me to keep looping until console key is equal to Q, right? Well, I got to do a while, right? And I got to check console key. And if I've already made console key this, right, this empty, this null, right, I've got to give a value to console key which is not equal to Q, right? So which is fine. So I don't have to do this here, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? And I can, but I could put something like this looping structure. While console key is not equal to Q, right? And not equal is not a great way to loop, but, and here's my loop, right? And inside there, I'm going to put a switch statement. I'm just going to move this switch statement inside here. I'm just going to format it again for you. Here, let's just move it in. So console key is not equal to Q. Console key isn't equal to Q. It doesn't start as equal to Q, right? Right now it starts as nothing, right? At null. So console key is not equal to Q. That's true. It's going to run it through once. Switch console key. It's nothing. Case Q, break. Otherwise, console key is equal to console key. Is equal to check key, which is down here. Yeah.
But if you use the while, wouldn't you not need the Q case and the switch because it wouldn't even run it if it was Q?
It will never be Q, right? When it runs the first while, once I hit this line here, when I hit line 17, right? I'll put a break in there for you. If I hit line 17, the first time it runs, what is the value of console key? I'm not trying to confuse you here, by the way, guys. I'm just going step by step building this thing. It's an empty string, right? So is the condition not equal to Q? So it's true. The condition passes. It's true, which means I run through my switch once, right? My switch, console key is not equal to, right now it's equal to nothing. It's not case Q, that's not right. So it goes to my default case, which is going to check this, check my keys, right? Make sense? It's going to do this one time. So now, after it comes back down here into my switch, inside this code block, it's going to go and check the condition again. Is my console key Q? Yes? Okay, if it's Q, break, which is going to come here, and we're going to close down our app, right? If it's not, right, it's going to keep checking. It's going to keep asking me to print, it's going to keep asking me for Q. Enter Q, guys. Come on, I'm listening for Q. It's going to keep asking me that over and over again forever. Let's see if that's true. Let's see if I haven't made a mistake in my thinking. Press Q. Right? So I press a button, and I have to press enter because, remember, with the console write line, I have to press a button and enter. And I'm going to keep doing this forever, right? And I can keep doing this, and it's going to keep saying Q until I press Q and then enter. And then it's going to drop out. So like an endless, it'll keep going. It'll keep asking for a character, right? Until it quits, right? So let's change this now. Check key. Press Q to exit, right? Or R to roll, right? Q to exit or R to roll. I don't want it to roll a random number until I tell it to roll, right? R to roll, Q to exit. So I've got my Q state, my Q condition here, my case Q. I want to make my case R. So case R, right? And here's my break, right, for my R. I haven't done anything with R yet. I'm listening for R, right? But I'm not getting anything yet. I haven't done anything. But look, I've got this funky result is equal to random next key, blah, blah. Right here is what it is right here, right? Wouldn't it be nice if I made this into a method? So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go right click. I'm going to take this whole thing, right click in here, and I'm going to refactor. I'm going to go extract method. And when I do that, it's going to say, what's my method name? What I want to do is like, I'm going to call this roll die, right? That's what I'm going to call it. The roll die method, which is going to return an integer, right? I'll press OK. It's going to put this roll die method down here before check key, right? Because this is the order that I have it written, right? And if you notice, result is equal to roll die, right? Random. This is the thing that's going to go in here, my random number generator. And the result, both those parameters are going to go into my roll die method. Here's my roll die method. Yes?
Do that one more. I didn't see what part you took.
Sure, man. Here, I'll just do a Control Z, and we're back to here. Right? And I'll go right click, and I'll go refactor and extract method, and I'll call it roll die. Right? That's all I've done. Okay, but I don't need this result up here. This is just useless, right? I got the result, right? And I'm getting the result of the result back into this result variable. All I'm doing is I'm sending in my random number generator, which is RND, and the result parameter, just like I did down here with console key, so that whatever I do within my method returns inside the same variable. That's all I'm doing. Remember, I'm only, most methods only have one return, unless I use some kind of array or something else, or some kind of other custom object that I'm sending to the method, right? Returns one method, one return value. Okay, so I'm going to take this now, and what am I going to do with it? Well, I got to put it here, right? Because this is when I want it. I want it to roll die. I want to get this result back when I oops, press R. Make sense? So whenever I press the R, it's going to fire up and ask me for my roll die method. If I press Q, it's going to break. It's going to stop my code, right? And if it's going to, otherwise, it's going to keep asking me to press R or Q. It's going to listen for R or Q every time. Kind of a cheesy method, but it works. Right? Let's check this out. I'm going to run it, right? And it says, hey, press Q or R to roll. If I press R, I get a random number. And this is the problem, isn't it? So how do we stop this from looping infinitely? Because once I press R the first time, hey, this is debugging, guys, right? Once I press R the first time, it's going to keep on generating a number from 1 to 6. And by the way, I see some issues with that random number generator already. Well, we're going to see what the issue is in a bit. Okay, so R, the result, is always going to be, once I've hit R, right, and I come back out here to my case, right, I should clear what I've entered, right? Because right now my switch, my console key, is going to be R. It's going to come back and it's going to be R again. And it's going to be R again, and R again, and keep it's going to keep becoming R. So now I have two different results I'm listening for, Q and R. I need to clear this console key up again. So how do I do that? Well, down here, I'm going to say console key. If I do, hold on there. If I do it here, right? If I do it here, console key, and I reset it down here, my switch is going to last forever, because then that's bad. But if I do it here, right, where I reset it, console key is equal to nothing. Again, I kind of reset the console key. If I do that, right, and it gives me a warning. It says, warning, unreachable code detected, right? Because it's underneath my break. That's why it's unreachable. That's good. So that's a finger error for me, right? I meant to put it here, inside my my code block. Remember, the break and the case are like the curly braces in your code block, if you remember. My opening curly brace and my closing curly brace, and inside between case and break, I have my code block now, that's my new code block. Result is equal to this, and console key is equal to reset, because I've got my result, and now I want to check my console again, right? If I left it at R, it's going to loop forever, like we just saw. But I want it to loop every time I press the button. Again, there's different ways, there's different approaches to this method, to this problem. My problem would be, ask the user to press an R or Q, Q exits, R continues to roll the die every time you press R, right? That's my problem, right? How do I take care of this problem? I could use a do-while loop. I could use a while loop. And there's other looping structures I could use as well. Let's use a while loop for now. Okay. I'll run it. So I press R and enter, and I get a 3. R and enter, I get a 2. 3, 4, 4, 5, 1, 1, 4. Where's my 6, man? Where's my damn 6? Right? Why am I not getting a 6? Anyone have an idea? Yes.
In the type of parameters specified, those are the limitations. So, well, the minimum can be 1.
Does it go to the maximum?
And the max value is of the types.
So therefore, my roll die method, which is down here, is incorrect. It shouldn't be 1 to 6. This is a nice, in our mind, we're thinking it should be from 1 to 6. Everything is included. That's the range. But it goes from 1 to 6, but not including 6. 6 is the upper range.
Why does it include the 1?
That's the starting value. So this is the start. This is our minimum value of 1. See what it says? Minimum value. And maximum value being 6. If I made this if I made this, our maximum value being 6, which I can do this. Remember, there's 2 signatures, right? Our maximum value being 6, right? But I add 1 to it. That means it goes from 0 to 6, maximum 6, so 0 to 5, and I add 1 to it. Would that be a better structure? So I don't have a minimum value now, because that's the signature accepts three different signatures for my method, right? Nothing, a maximum value, or a minimum maximum value. Those are the 3 signatures, right? My random number generator. Okay, in this particular case, I'm saying the maximum value is 6, but it starts at, there's no minimum value, it starts at 0, a non-negative integer, 0. So it starts at 0, and it goes to 6, but not including 6, so anything less than 6 would be 5, right? 0 to 5, plus 1. If it's 0, it's a 1. If it's 5, it becomes a 6. So this will be a better looping structure, a better random number generator. Let's try it again. Q to exit or R to roll. R, 6, 4. I want to see my 1, and then I'm happy. There's a 1. Got a bunch of 1s. It's bad, right? All right. This is good. So I've got a loop, right? This is my main loop, right? Which is it's checking the console over and over again, right? And it's checking for either a Q, which is breaks. It breaks, it leaves the program, or an R, right, that rolls the die. Questions on what we did here? And why did I create this? I created this so you understand overload, number 1, a little bit, because we talked about structures. I also wanted you to understand advanced method. We're talking about advanced methods in this chapter, whether it's in the chapter or not. This is the Tom part of the chapter, right? And I'm also showing you how to do refactoring, so you can create methods by extracting the method by adding a few lines together, right? And then pulling it out, and it's going to create a method stub for you automatically, right? That's what it does. Okay, which is what I've created. Right, so I've got 2 methods, this roll die method and this check key method, and both roll die and check key have been created by extracting the methods out by refactoring. Okay, sometimes we need to do that because we read a bunch of code, and when we're writing the code down, we realize that this code, it's repeating, it can be put into a method, and so I only have to call it once. I don't have to rewrite my code over and over again. And as programmers, when you're in the real world, okay, so listen up. You're in the real world. One of your objectives is your rework. Your rework has to be plus or minus 5%, right, or plus or minus 10%. When your rework goes beyond 10%, right, you get a lower objective rating, right, as a worker I'm talking about. Like if you imagine if your rework was 50%, that means every time you write a piece of code, you have to rewrite it again half the time, right? Every other time you're going to rewrite that code because it's so bad. So they rate you on rework a lot of times. They rate you on how good you are at writing your code the most efficiently, kind of, code execution one time. And as we get into object-oriented programming, we'll see next week, right? It's another way of reducing our code base or making our code more efficient. That's what we're doing when we use object-oriented programming in some ways. It's very powerful and allows us to use blueprints, classes, to create objects that we can reuse over and over again. Okay, this is all fine and good. I've got my console key. I've got my code. I know I'm not giving you guys a break this morning, but we have a lot of stuff to cover, so bear with me, right, as we do this. So we've got a roll die. What if I want to roll my die multiple times? I want to do like 2 dice, add them together, right? How would I do that? So I've got my roll die method, and I want to roll it twice. Is there something I could put another, maybe I can ask for something up here, right? Can someone suggest another switch that I could add? Yes. I like that. A roll die a number of times. So there's roll die once, right? Here's a roll die, a result. And I can overload my method. That's definitely what I want to do, right? Because we're doing overload today, right? And which means I'm going to just, for now, I'm just going to copy my method over here. Boom, right? And I've got the exact same signature. What's bad with this is an error, right? Because I've got, this is ambiguous code because it doesn't know what to do, right? I've got my random number generator, which I need, right? I've got my integer result, which I need, right? And then, of course, I have to have my second method, which is what I want to write here, is how many times do I want to roll, right? So my second method is I want to get my result, but I want to loop a number of times, right? So I'll call this integer, and we'll call it numDice, right? My numDice method, or my numDice parameter, right? So I want to know how many dice do I want to roll. Right now I'm rolling 1, right, as an example. And now when I have my numDice, I want to add my result, right? I want to add to my result a number of dice that I roll. And then I want to print out the result. So the console.writeLine, right? Uh-oh, hey, look. Oh, man, I have to write console.writeLine again? This is bad code. I'm duplicating code. Even that one line is bad. How do I get rid of that console.writeLine and only write it once? Got to think of that. I'll come back to that in a second, right? Because I don't want to do this. This is an extra line of code here. I got my console.writeLine that I'm repeating. This is bad, right? The only thing I should repeat is the code that's original, right? Or the code that I need to repeat, right? So here's my result. Result is equal to random next 6 plus 1. That's going to stay. But I'm going to create a for loop, and I'm going to say for rolls is equal to 0, right? Let me just space it out properly so you guys can see it so you don't complain too much. Rolls, I'm going to check for when rolls is less than the number of dice. As long as it's less than the number of dice, right? Rolls plus plus, right? So the number of rolls, okay, hold on a second. And I've got my code block, and it's giving me an issue with rolls. The name rolls does not exist in the current context. What do I need to do there to make rolls exist? Should I declare it somewhere? I have to actually declare it as an integer, right? So if I do this, int rolls equal to 0, then it doesn't give me an issue, right? Now, why is it giving me this roll die problem up here, right? It's giving me that roll die problem because, first of all, I've closed this off by accident, right? And I don't have a return result, right? So hold on, let me just space up so you guys can see what I'm doing. Oops. There. Okay, so I'm saying for however many rolls, as long as it's less than number dice, right? So if I put 2 in there, right? 2 dice, roll starts at 0. As long as rolls is less than 2, right? As an example, loop. So it starts at 0, goes through once, right? Goes to 1, goes through a second time, becomes 2, it doesn't meet the condition, right? Drops out, doesn't do the third one, right? That's what it does. And it calculates, but what it doesn't do is it calculates the result twice, right? Once and twice, result second time, and it just wipes out the first result. So I don't want to do this, I want to do this. Make sense? I want to add result to itself every time. Every time there's a new die, if I do 1, 2, 10 dies, whatever I want to do, right? I want to make that die, this die here, numDice. I want to make this die go through a number of times, right? But this console.writeLine is really bugging me. I know it's simple and it's silly, right? And you might think, well, it's not a big deal. It's only one line, Tom. But this is how we have code bloat, right? We don't want that. Shouldn't it be somewhere over here where I print out the result here once? Once I get the results, as an example, then I write line here. Yeah, I could do that here, but then I would have to do it again if I have, because there's going to be another roll, a random roll here, right? Instead of Q and R, I'm going to listen for something else in order for me to generate my results, right? Some other number or something like that, right? And I got to figure that out. Am I going to do a single die? Do I want to be able to enter any number? Like, what am I listening for this time, right? And am I going to do, if I just kind of enter R with a result of with nothing, right? As an example, I'll put R and enter. I'm just going to generate this. What if I want to do 2 dice? What am I going to pick? A 2? I'm just saying. That would be the easiest way to do it. And again, this is really kind of crazy cracked, right? If I was to do this in real life. But let's listen for a 2, right? The 2 button, or a 2 character, right? And then our results is equal to roll die random results, and then I'm going to put a number in it that says 2, right? We're just going to convert it for everything, right? Because what the hell, right? This is what I want to do, and this is great. But this and here, it would bug me, but you know what? I got to put it here and here anyway, if in this particular case. Or maybe I want to put it somewhere else where I right line the result. Like, for example, back here, right? Somewhere else where this is the console, right? And maybe I don't want to write anything until I'm done the loop. Like maybe the loop has to be done. So after the switch, I'm going to do my right line down here. And I only do it once. Think about if I only want to write my console.writeLine one time, my result, it lives inside this context because my result is initiated up here, right? So it lives, the scope inside this main, it's still alive inside this main, right? That's where the result is, right? So if I put down here, before the while loop is going to be checked again, and before the switch loop comes back in and we check in the switch again, the switch condition, right? I could put a right line down here, which is this console.writeLine result, right? Yeah?
Before we get that, in the case 2, are we going to have to reset the console key in that one too?
Yes, very good. This looks like something that could be, it's identical, doesn't it? It's almost looking like a method of its own, right? Look. Same kind of code over again, code duplication. And if I'm resetting the console key again and again, right? That bugs me. Could this be written a better way? Could this be written more efficiently? Is there another way we could put the building blocks together to write it so I have less duplication? Those are the questions I want you to ask yourselves as we move through this course, right? Okay. For now, let's leave it the way it is because we know this is going to work, right? So random result 2. Right? Or we think it's going to work. How about that? It's going to return the result. It's going to write the result out. And there's 2 different signatures. There's signature 1, which is this roll die, right? And there's signature 2, which is this one. And if I was to write roll die again, so let's say just to test it, I'm just going to start typing down here just to test the method. Roll die. And if I open the brackets, now it gives me 2 signatures, right? 1 and 2, right? So this is 1, random number, a type that's random, a type that's integer, and the second one is a random number seed and 2 integers, right? So 2 different signatures that we're writing, right? And that's what IntelliSense will do. Once you've written the signatures, it'll give you the code hinting help. Okay, let's see if we've done this correctly and run it. Okay, plus Q. I'm going to press R. There's my first one, 4. And now I'm going to press 2. Right? 9. It did it, right? Let's do it again. 13, 20, 26. Hold on. What's going on? How come it's going on forever and ever? How come it's adding on for my thing forever and ever? And this is why we do test cases, because I made it so that way it quit. And I redid this thing, this result, right, is I plus equal to this number. But now I got to reset my result too, because this is the second time we're testing another case, right? And I'm realizing just like console key had to be reset, result has to be reset too. Oh, now I definitely see a method coming, right? Think about this method, guys, right? So what am I doing? I'm going to say result. Right, after I've printed my result out, because that's what roll die does, right? And before I go to console key is equal to this, I reset my console key, I'm going to say my result is equal to 0, right? And I'm going to do the same thing here and here. Now it's definitely looking the same, right? I need to reset my result twice. Let's check this to see if it works. Okay, here's my first one. 1, 2, right? This is good. And then here's my second one, 2. Now it's better. And there's Q. Here's my question for you though. Do I really have to do it here? Result is equal to 0 up here? Well, no, because every time we go into the first signature, right, result is overwritten. Right? Result gets overwritten. It doesn't add on to itself. It's only the second signature that causes an issue. Right? This result plus equals to result, right? So theoretically, I mean, this is where my result is returned, right? I definitely need to do it after this. But this doesn't hurt if I do it here too, right? So this result is equal to 0 and console key is equal to blank is like, it's like resetting, right? Hey, a reset method, okay. So I'm going to kind of highlight these two things. And by the way, I'm playing with you guys, eh? I don't have to make all these silly methods, but let's just do it because we're learning refactoring. Refactor, extract method, right? And now I'm going to call this like reset. Okay, it's my reset method. And my reset method, if you notice, right, when I said reset, it sends a reference to my result and my console key. And this is why I want to look at this thing here. Where's my my reset here? Why? Why is it doing a reference? I'm using reference, right? I'm sending the actual variables now to reset. And by the way, it didn't do it over here, right? That's how it should read it like, right? The reason why is because it only has one return, right? Methods only have one return, and this is getting around the single return limitation of a method. I can only return one result, right? But reference, and this is why this is bad. I knew this was going to do this, right? But I wanted to show you to you because we're talking about reference parameters, sending things by reference as opposed to sending things by value. I can't reset both my result and my console key. I can't do that because my result and my console key are two different parameters, right? And I'm resetting both of them. So both values are changing when they're going into my parameter, into my my method, right? So this result and console key is the reason why we need references to these in this particular methodology right now. And by the way, we'll figure out ways to do this better next week, right? We need to do this if we're going to do this in a method because, or unless I have two different methods to reset, or what I just did earlier, which is put the reset in there twice, right? Guys, I'll tell you right now, if you're going to use a reference like this, or if you're going to reset twice, what would I prefer? Reset twice. References are bad, 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 right? This could cause all kinds of issues to my actual output by accident, right? I don't recommend this at all, this methodology, even though it looks cleaner and nicer. I'd rather you guys use instance variables, which we're going to talk about later on, which would be declared up here in the class level, globals, so to speak, than, or private instance variables in the class level, than creating reference variables. This is bad. Okay, so I'm going to just undo that change. I showed it to you because you can do it, but I don't recommend it, and so that I wouldn't do it in my own code, I'll leave it the way it is for now. When we get to object-oriented programming, you're going to see other ways of us doing this resetting, which is a lot easier, a lot smoother, and you're also going to see that when I create my roll die methodologies, my methods, they're not going to need to pass any of this stuff, right? Okay, so I've reset everything. My result goes to 0. My console key gets reset as well. I could probably do that down here as well, my result and console key to be reset one time, like here. That's another way of doing it. So what if I took these things, if I want to do the same? First of all, let's test it. Let's test it back to, because we just did a bunch of stuff, right? I don't want to make sure that I didn't mess anything up. So the result is equals 6, 2. Okay, I press my 2 button. So I have now I have double dice, right? And you know what? Let us have. I'll make another case, right? I'll make another case that says 3, right? I'm just copying the case. 3 dice. So 2 or 3 dice. It allows me to roll, right? 2 or 3 dice. For hell, let's just do one more, right? Now we're seeing a lot of duplication, right? So there's a bunch of duplication that I'm doing here. Does anyone have an idea of what to do here to reduce my method calls? So 2, 3, 4, I'm doing all this extra work here in my, my cases, right? And when I run this thing, if I go 2, right, 5, if I go 3, I get 11. If I go 4, I get 12. It's not very, very good for 4 dice.
Yeah.
Come on. There we go. Okay. Phew. Man, I'm bad. Right? The point is that... No. The point is that what I'd like to do is, as I'm rolling, you know, the dice and everything else, whatever number I type in, right, I want to convert. Wait, what kind of method would we use? We just talked about this yesterday, right? I want to convert or try and parse the method, parse the method, the number that I'm getting, the string, into an integer. So if it's not a Q or an R, then go to my default case, and in my default case, do a conversion. I want to try and convert the number that I get. I want to check the number and convert it into a number. Now this is dangerous because when you do conversions, it lets the user put whatever input he wants. I could get a Q and an R. I can get something weird, right? And then if I assume that I'm going to get a number, right, as an example, I have to be able to check or validate my input. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to leave it the way it is because I want to show you better methodology next week, right? Because this is bad, right? But at least we know what bad is. First, before we know what good is, we need to know what bad is, right? Okay, so again, you have your 2 methods, roll die and roll die. This is your overloaded methodology right here. So, you know, this is your first method, and you can put some comments there saying method takes 2 parameters, and then this method takes 3 parameters. Method signature with 3 parameters, right? And this method checks the key. Method checks key entered in order to perform task. Okay, so a bunch of some comments, right? That's all we're doing here. And here, this while loop, keep looping until Q is entered. Right? That's what this is doing. Make sense? All I'm doing is commenting. I'm describing what I'm doing here, right? Oh man, I made all this work. I better do something, or else you guys are gonna get mad at me because I didn't kind of put this up to GitHub for you want to check the results. So created basic console entry loop and dice roller. And I want to increase that. I want to go to unsync commits and sync it up, right? And now when I go into my GitHub to check it, right, then I have all my stuff in here on GitHub, just in case you guys want to see that stuff. All right. A couple of interesting things that we did today. Hey, take a look at my heat map over here, eh? I've got like, on my scroll bar, I've got this big blue area here, and then I've got these little blue areas down here. What are these things anyway? Well, it's almost like this is the code block. This defines the code block. And you see this one big code block up here, and there's a couple of smaller code blocks down here. where I can simply kind of go in there, and if I want to kind of just check to see where I'm at, I know that if I'm up here, I'm in the main code block, and if I'm down here, I'm looking at these three methods. It's a quick way of knowing where my code is, right? So again, from an overload resolution perspective, what it's going to do is the compiler or the interpreter first, it's going to try, because we're doing some code hinting, it's going to try and see if there's any applicable methods that make sense, right? The problem is that C# has something called betterness rules. And what they do is it determines which method version to call, right? If the methods are identical, right, or if we get into a situation where the methods are so close that C# doesn't know which one to call, right, we're going to have an issue. Let's take a look at some of those conditions or the situations like that. So here's some conversions when we talk about this betterness order thing. If I, for example, pass in different kinds of integers or floats as an example, and it doesn't have a float signature or a long, but we're listening for an int, it'll do some kind of conversion. It'll automatically do conversion, which is bad. That's bad. That means it'll truncate or chop off our accuracy when we put in a kind of a variable that we haven't defined a method for. Okay, so you got to think of that. That is definitely a side effect, if you will. And it's showing you here what I showed you already. Avoiding ambiguous methods. Here's an ambiguous method. I've got a few different method calls here. I've got the simple method where I have a signature that has an integer and a double. There's one signature. And here's another one, a double and an integer. Well, that's really silly, isn't it? Right? Actually, it's the same method. Right? One is just the other, the one, it's an interesting that it does that, right? But now we have this simple method down here. We're doing another method call down here, and this one has two integers. But remember, with betterness rules, which I just said, right? Going back to with these betterness rules here, it's going to try and convert, right, an integer into a double or something. It's going to try and make some conversions happening because there is no integer signature. There's a double integer signature and there's an integer double signature. So which one is it going to convert? It doesn't know, and therefore it'll cause an error. This may seem confusing to you, and it should be, because you should never get into this situation, right? They're the same method, pretty much. This is where overloading methods gets a little carried away, right? Same method, int double, double int, pretty much. But the parameter order is different. And remember, if we don't have, it doesn't know, we haven't given it a signature that's int int. We've given it int double, double int, but we've never given it int int. So it's going to try and convert one or both of these variables to comply to one of these signatures. But both of the signatures are identical because whether you can kind of convert it here or here, it doesn't know what to do, so it gives an error. It's called an ambiguous call. So we want to do that. We want to avoid it, and that's why it gives us this error. How about optional parameters? That's another way of doing things. We have overloaded methods, but we can use optional parameters, and I kind of talked about that in my little quiz this morning, right? I said, hey, you can do if you're for an optional parameter, how do we do that? Well, here's an example of a default we can actually pass into the parameter. I can pass in a default value of 1, right? That's what this is doing, right? So here's my signature for display size. So length, a width, and a height that I've initialized at 1. Okay? Let's go for another signature call. Here's different declarations for the same thing. This is method 1, this is method 2, this is method 3, this is method 4, this is method 5. Method 1 has 1, 2, 3, 4 ints, with the last one having a default value. This is okay, right? Because the first 3 have no default values. We talked about this. And the last one has a default value, right? Here's the second method. Int default value int. Invalid because you haven't given it a default value here. You have given it in the second parameter, but the third one you go back to not giving it anything. C# doesn't like this, so it'll give you an error. It'll spit out, it'll belch. It'll go, ugh, no, I can't do this one. So this is invalid, right? Here's another one. Int a is equal to 3. We've given it the value. B is equal to 4. C is equal to 5. All of them have default values. Therefore, this is valid, right? And then this is the next one. Int, no default values, right? We're just declaring the integers, okay? And now here's the last one. We've declared the integers. We didn't declare this one, and we declared this one. Again, the same kind of thing where you have a mix between giving it default values and not giving it default values. So again, after you've given it default values, anything after the time, they all have to have default values. That's the way it has to be, just like my quiz question, right? So again, what we're doing here is when we've given out default values, the reason why we want to do that sometimes is because sometimes what happens is, and this is why we call them optional parameters, if the parameter is left out, right, it doesn't matter whether the user of the class or method uses the parameter or not, right? We want to give the value anyway. So he can enter x, let's say he's defining as the size of a shape, and it could be 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. If he gives us our height and width, and he doesn't give us our depth as an example, we know it's 2-dimensional. We can provide a depth of 1, right? Or, you know, that's our default value. But if he enters height, width, and depth, then we know it's 3-dimensional, right? And he's provided his own value for the depth. Okay? Okay, here's another way to look at this. And we talked about, so this is valid. There's 4 arguments are assigned to the four parameters. This is, we're calling the method now, right? So we're talking about optional parameters, right? So here's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's listening for 4, right? Here's the second one, 1, 2, 3. It's valid because the 3 arguments are assigned to ABC in this method, and the default value is 33.2 is given to D, right? Here's our method declaration. Our default value 33.2, right, inside our method declaration for this parameter is already given, right? So therefore, when we go to this, right, it's okay if we don't put the third one in because we already have a definition for our variable. Even if it doesn't send it to us, we still have it, right? Here's another one. We've given 2 values, right? And the third one and the fourth one have already been defined, right? Here's the third one and the fourth one, so we don't have to take a third or fourth one. Here's a problem, right? Because this one only gives 1 value. However, right, the second one doesn't have a default value, so therefore it's going to error out saying there's a problem. Yes? Are you putting your hand up to something? Okay. And the same thing goes with some of these other cases. Now, if you want to declare some of them that have default values and not others, this is where that other question that I asked you was. You have to use named parameters. And the way we name the parameters is using the name of the parameter, C or A or whatever, followed by a colon, followed by its value. So this is valid because we're naming all the parameters, and we don't have to name them in the right order. We can name them in any order we want, right? But you can't mix this with this. This all has to be in the right order because not all of them are named. So this is assuming A, this is assuming B, this is okay, and then D and C could be the other order because it doesn't matter, you're naming them. But this one, you're starting off with D, and now you're putting in 6, but 6 doesn't comply with the order because it's supposed to be a string value, and so you're getting an error, right? So this is invalid because it's kind of mixing things up. Again, C# gives you the ability to do these optional variables instead of creating multiple signatures. So I have multiple signatures, right? As an example, instead of my example code here, where I have two signatures, right? I have my first signature for roll die with nothing, and my second signature for roll die with a number of dice, right? And where it adds the result. I could have written this a little differently, couldn't I? I could say that the number of dice is equal to 0 or 1 as my default, right? And then I don't need this one because this is 1, right? So I should be able to default. I want to do, again, we're talking about reducing the amount of code lines, right? More code efficiency. So if I was to do it like this, if I say num dice, right, is equal to 1, right? And I apologize for how it goes over, right? Here it is, num dice is equal to 1. This is a code signature that will accept, it has 3 parameters, but one of them is a optional parameter. I can take the first 2, or I can take 1, 2, and 3, right? And my third parameter is an optional parameter that I've already defaulted to 1. So if this means that if I wipe this thing out, and just for the case of our code here, I'm just going to I'm going to wipe it out like this by using a comment block, right? Here's my comment block. I'm just commenting this out, right? And I only have one signature. Now I'm not getting an error because I could do this, or I could do any one of these, and it's the same thing. I don't have to use this code because I've given it a optional variable here, an optional parameter. Let us run this thing together and make sure that I'm not wrong. So again, if I just press R, it runs and it just generates a variable from, I'm only running that one method now, right? Or if I do 3, then hopefully I'll get some good results with 3d6. Come on, give me an 18. Come on. I'm playing D&D here. I want to generate my character. God damn it. Okay, so it didn't work. I'm going to press Q. I'm out of here. But you can see that this method worked okay. I took it out. I commented the method out, but I used a optional parameter here, and we're still good, right? It's a different option as opposed to multiple signature calls, right? One method, optional parameters. Another way to do it. And I'll be honest with you, this is probably the preferred methodology in many cases. You want to give yourself as much flexibility, right? But you could have more than one overloaded method with different optional parameters as well. And you got to watch that. And this is where the betterness rules comes into play. Which one do I choose, right? Okay, we're almost done for the day. And we're not going to be able to cover every single thing. But remember, some of this is on you, right? And it's talking about advantages of using named arguments over others, and so on. And one piece that I haven't covered with you, I'm just going to skip through, because this is just the same, more of the same. Oh, actually, I did cover everything. It's more of the same, and we kind of did this "you do it" piece. The "you do it" piece that's in the PowerPoint presentation is basically say, let's do it together. Let's build an overloaded method, right? Well, we just did one. We just did this big example with our dice roller, right? Hey, hint, hint. Get to know this dice roller methodology nice because I'm going to make it probably part of your tests, right? You're going to have to generate this random number or understand how to use it anyway, even if you don't generate it. Understand if I want to make a number of dice. Right now, the parameter that I've made, this method, it only allows you to roll d6s, 6-sided dice, right? What if I want you to roll 20-sided dice, or 100-sided dice, or 1,000-sided dice, right? Maybe we want to make it flexible to be able to do that, right? Okay, that's it for today. Next week, and I know this is a big long video, so it's going to be like a hell to upload, right? I'm going to try and break it up. It might be broken up into a couple parts, right? But it's okay. It's good. YouTube will take it. It just means it'll be a big long video that you'll have to skip through, right? One thing that I'd ask you to do for next week, so homework for next week, is please read ahead. So when we get together, we can make the most of our session, right? So read chapter 9 from your book, and then next week I'll be giving you your first assignment, okay? And we'll be doing more object-oriented programming as next week. We might do chapter 9 for a couple weeks. I might do next week and maybe the week after. And the reason for that is because it's a really important chapter. Okay? Thank you very much.